Brothers in Tech is a weekly podcast focused on personal and home technology, helping provide you, our fellow brothers and sisters in tech, with some information, assistance, and recommendations. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Brothers in Tech here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson, and over on the screen, my right, to my left here, that's the magic of cameras, is Brian Jackson, my actual brother in tech. How you doing, Brian?
I'm great, Alan. Doing good. Excited to be here live, chatting with you about some cool new things. And
yeah,
I mean, this is honestly why we do this, to get some cool new features out there, some exciting things. I mean, there's no other reason for you and I to talk, basically, is what I'm saying.
No, this is kind of like our fun time of the year where we actually do talk a little bit more than the bare minimum. And talking about what Brian's alluding to is every year Apple. We're big Apple fans. We've kind of made no bones about that on the show before. But Apple does have their annual Worldwide Developers Conference that goes on. The whole goal is to inform people who are developing new apps for the Mac or iPhone or iPad or so forth, to explain to them what are some new features and capabilities that are going to be happening going forward, and some updates and improvements to the phones and iPads and Macs. The great thing for us as consumers is that you get to really see a lot of the features and just new enhancements that are going to be happening to the devices we use here in the coming months. And that's why we get excited. So they did have their big keynote on Tuesday, and we kind of dissected it. We've gone through it, gotten familiar with everything they announced. So really here on Brothers in Tech today, we're going to be talking through some of those more interesting updates and things that we feel like are going to be very beneficial or could be really exciting to you all as consumers using this.
So just a quick disclaimer, right? None of this has come out and no one's got their hand. Well, I guess there's been some betas and things, but we haven't had our hands on it. We are going by the way they've demonstrated and the way they've talked about it and some of the research that we've done. So
that's right.
All this is aspirational. When we say we love this and we love this idea, we're kind of going by the fact that we think it's going to work the way it says it's going to work. So yeah,
absolutely. We are buying into the Apple hype that was given off during the keynote, but I think we can all attest to things that
that's what we do.
We've seen things announced in these keynotes before or talked about. And when it comes down to actually rolling out to being in a final product, it doesn't always hold up as much as expected. So do have to put a little bit of a disclaimer on that for it. Oh, excuse me. This show, though, just as a reminder to anybody, in case you're joining us or watching for the first time, Brothers in Tech, Brian and I, we are actual brothers. We live on the other sides of the country from each other, but we do get together and talk technology quite a bit. And especially when it talks about technology that is family, home, or personal technology. We don't get into a lot of corporate enterprise, big business technology. We talk about technology that you may find yourself using in your own personal or home or family environment. And also to serve as a little bit of an IT resource to those of you that are sometimes maybe called by family members in your group to help on an IT issue or problem.
Resource or support group, one or the other.
A little bit of both. A little bit of both, I think. So, all right, Brian. Well, let's talk about this Worldwide Developers Conference, and they went through a lot of things. So go ahead and I'll go ahead and kind of key it up to everybody too, that we are not going to cover everything that was talked about at this conference because it's a lot. It was about an hour and a half long keynote. If by the end of this, you're still really interested in hearing more about some of the announcements or updates, I recommend going and watching the keynote. You can actually go to Apple's website and there is a button. It's on the homepage now. It may be tucked away after a few more days, where you can actually watch the keynote and see the entire presentation and get a sense for everything. But then, Brian, they covered everything from iOS, which is the operating system that runs your iPhones, to iPadOS, to Mac operating system for the Mac computers, as even the watch. They talked about the operating system on that too. So is it okay with you, Brian, if we start Well, let's go ahead and mention about the hardware
Yeah,
quickly, just to
yeah.
kind of get out of the way. Actually, I'm going to turn this off here. We're going
And I'll quickly mention too, Alan. I think the
to,
only operating system they didn't mention, and maybe I missed it, was tvOS.
yeah, they did not
Right?
discuss
There was
anything
nothing
with
about
Apple TV
tvOS.
today. Nope,
Yeah.
nothing there.
I do think there was
So,
something will eventually kind of tie into
yeah,
that. None of this was specific to that. So
well, Apple has
where
typically, many years past, they didn't do a lot of hardware announcements at these Worldwide
right,
Developers Conference. They were all focused on the software. They did make a couple hardware announcements this year. They have in a few years past as well. We're not going to spend a lot of time on those because honestly, they're not revolutionary products. They're not anything that's really moving us too terribly forward. They did announce a new processor, which is the M2 that they're making to start putting into products. If you recall, year and a half, 2 years ago, we got the M1 that started to get rolled into a lot of products. It was a huge performance boost
big,
for
yep,
Apple when they went to the M1. M2, it's still a nice bump. I mean, I think they're saying between 18 and 30 some percent improvement in different areas, but it's not this huge the same type of bump that we saw with the first one.
Well,
Um,
I mean, let's be honest. They shot themselves in the foot by making such a dramatic change with the M1, right? I mean,
yeah,
and just for people that don't listen to us all the time, which I don't know why you wouldn't, but um, the M1 was Apple's first entry into them making their own chip. So I think that's
yeah,
the big key, right? Is that they made a big splash. M1, we're making the chip, which makes everything more efficient and smooth. Now this is the incremental bump, and I think people are acting a lot like Alan is right now. It's like, oh, only 18% improvement,
yeah.
but that's because they went with this
Yeah,
massive update last time, and we knew they couldn't keep that up. If they did,
no,
I mean, it would be insane. What they'd leave everyone in the dust,
no,
right?
it's still great, and I mean they've still got plenty of numbers to keep growing into. So
Yeah,
this is all good. If
yeah,
every couple of years they're rolling out another version of the chip, I think we're on a great pathway going forward.
yeah.
Um, but the only hardware that they announced two products. One is a brand new MacBook Air. So in case
Hmm.
you're not familiar with it, and I guess I could bring up just a quick picture of it. MacBook Air is their smallest, thinnest, most portable laptop that they make. It's meant to be really the easiest one to kind of travel with, the easiest one to kind of move around with. You don't have to worry about any kind of a lot of
Yeah,
weight to it. It's also super thin. Now, it's always been kind of the least powerful of the laptops that Apple has made. That's still the case, and it's also the most affordable in a lot of cases too. But keeping in mind that they did put the brand new M2 into this laptop, so automatically you're looking at a much faster laptop than, dare say, the one I'm on right now, which is 5 years old.
sure.
It's a
Yep,
MacBook Pro, but this is going to be faster than it. So it's still a very, very good machine.
yep,
Doesn't have a lot of the pro features, doesn't have a lot of the high end features that a lot of the other laptops do. But if your goal is portability, um, ease of use, and cost, I think the MacBook Air is a wonderful, wonderful laptop for most people.
yep.
So a little bit of a new design to it. I think it looked really nice. Few new
I think it's
colors.
much slicker than before. I think the kind of the angled design that they had before to try to pretend like the front was really really thin versus the back and all of that they were doing. This is pretty clean. I think it's great. And honestly, if you were someone that even 6 months ago was looking at maybe a MacBook Pro, especially like the 13-inch MacBook Pro that was available at that point, I think this potentially even puts that out of the water. I think that makes that
I think so
one
too.
really obsolete. And this
I
is going to
agree.
be a really slick device. Yep.
So I think it's a great product for that. Now, I go back. There was a second one,
Hmm.
another item they announced hardware. It's a MacBook Pro, a new 13-inch MacBook Pro. Just to give a little disclaimer here. So what Apple has basically done, they have your MacBook Air, which is your lighter, maybe lower end laptop that's really meant for portability. Then they have this weird MacBook Pro 13-inch, and they call it a MacBook Pro, but it's, in all honesty, it's not really a pro machine. It is called the MacBook Pro, but it's more or less your middle option on laptops. They did announce a new version. It does have this new chip, so it is a very fast, good machine. I mean, there's no problems with it. It is using the touch bar,
Yep.
which, in case you're familiar, that is a thing that was on Apple laptops for several years. I have one on my laptop. I never use it. I never touch it. This is the last laptop in their Apple's line that still uses that touch bar right now. Um, I don't understand the point of this laptop. I mean, I
I
feel
have
like
no idea.
you either go portable and less expensive, or you go with the Pro, a true Pro. And this, I think, is a Pro in name only. It doesn't have a lot of the ports that a MacBook Pro has. Doesn't have quite the specs that a real MacBook Pro does. It is less expensive. You can get this for $1,300, which you can't get a true MacBook Pro for $1,300.
Yeah.
So it's a weird little product. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's a good fit for some people who want to spend that amount of money, but have something a little bit more substantial than a MacBook Air. But I don't know. It's not a super winner for me, and it's just more
No,
of an
this was
incremental upgrade here for them today.
honestly, to me, it was a disappointment. I would have preferred they'd just not announce a Pro and just stick with the Air and say we got this cool new Air design. It looked like to me that they had a lot of the MacBook 13-inch Pros that were left over from the
Mhm.
last several years, and they
That's the way
wanted
it
to go
looks.
ahead and put the M2s in, which again,
Yeah.
exactly what a lot of people need, but I don't think it needed to be a new product. It was like, hey,
Yeah.
we've updated the 13, by the way, at the same time. I don't think they should have presented it as, oh my gosh, there's this new Pro, because it's the
It's
exact
confusing.
same device, and
Yeah.
with just a lot a better processor, which is great. So no, I think this one is confusing, and I would imagine in another year or so, this one will be gone, and there'll be a new design of Pros that will go with that whole line. But
Yeah.
again, great machine for someone that's upgrading. Absolutely great machine if it fits your needs. But no, I don't. I don't exactly know what they're doing there. So I agree with you. I wasn't that impressed or even cared much about the hardware. I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting the hardware. So that was kind of cool to see the Air. But the software is where they really shined in this one, I think.
Oh,
So
absolutely. I mean, and that's where we have to spend our time right now, is really talk about that. So let's jump right into software. That's
yeah,
really what we're kind of excited about getting into. So iOS, for those, again, for maybe not familiar, iOS is the operating system that powers your iPhone. Okay. When you turn on your iPhone, this is the system that you're interacting with. The way the icons look, the way they operate, the way you maneuver around through your phone and access different apps, that's all the operating system. So when they make a big update to their operating system, this is now version 16. It means when you install this update and you turn on your phone, things are going to look a little different. There's going to be some new functionality. There's going to be new tools available to you. So let's hit the highlights. There's a lot with
yeah.
iOS. They probably spent the most amount of time on this one, but let's see if we can hit some of the key things that we feel like are big takeaways from this one, Brian, if we
Sure.
can.
Yeah.
What's the first thing you got that you think we ought to talk about here?
Well, I mean, just let's take the path into the phone, right? When you pick up your iPhone, the first thing that you see is the lock screen. And I'll be honest with you, Alan, this was one of, and I'm really glad they let off with this, but this was one of my favorite announcements. And I have to also say, as much of a fanboy as I am of Apple, I do have to remind myself that I get caught up in seeing Apple do something like this, which looks incredibly slick. But yet Androids have been doing this for years,
I
right? I mean,
know. Yeah.
Android has been doing this and had options to do this. It's just that Mac has always been so locked down that says you can't do anything to your lock screen except add a different picture
Yeah.
and potentially tell us when you want these announcements to come. Well, they finally opened it up and said, you know what, we're going to allow you to customize your lock screen. And I was so excited. And again, I look at it and go, oh, Apple, you're the greatest, instead of, well, it's about time, right, that they were doing
Right.
this. But I will say the way they implement it, or at least the way it looks like it's going to be implemented, is beautiful. It's fantastic. So the idea is, you can now customize this lock screen. The lock screen, again, is what you see before you unlock your phone. And in the past, all you would be able to see is, here's the notifications that you just had. Here's the time, and that's it, right? Maybe here's what you need to know really quickly, and then open up to see more. They basically
Mhm.
have now kind of taken off the guardrails to allow you to be flexible with what could go into that lock screen, which
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm super thrilled about, because to me, this is always the frustrating part about using an iPhone is that I pick it up and all I'm doing is doing a quick look to see the fact. I mean, I don't even actually spend time on the lock screen anymore. I don't know about you, Alan. I pick it up and immediately I'm going to unlock it
Oh,
because
sure.
that's the
No,
only
I'm never on the lock
functionality it
screen.
has,
Yeah.
right? But
Yep.
now, potentially, it's going to allow you to do things like, put widgets on there to be able to see your AirPod battery life on the lock screen, to be able to see your next meeting that's coming up on the lock screen. All of these things that can be dynamically changing, which is super exciting. You're showing there on the right the
Yeah.
sports scores, right? You can
Yeah.
actually have a game that
That
is
is
showing
fun.
a ticker, which is awesome, right? It's
I
not
just
static
because
anymore.
that's nothing more frustrating than watching a ball, having to keep up with the score of a ball game when I'm not able to watch it, and I have to constantly be opening my phone
Yep.
every few minutes
And keeping it
and going to
unlocked,
the app to
keeping it.
see it. Where if I can have that pipe into the lock screen and just
Yeah.
have it there available
Awesome.
for me, it's great. Well, all right, let's be honest here. It's just basically giving us a lot of capabilities that the Apple Watch were able to do for us a while back, creating your own home
Yep.
faceplate like on a
Yep.
watch. And then on the watch, you're also able to add a little bit of the what do they call them? The
Complications. Hmm.
complications. Very
Yep.
similar here. This idea that if I wanted to add air quality indicator onto my lock screen, I could choose that and place it on there. Other things I want to see on that home screen, I can now customize, or that lock screen, I can now customize that. Very similar. Um,
Yep. Yep.
Notifications are going to come up from the bottom, which I know doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's going to be hopefully a better use of space and better management of those
Right.
notifications the way they roll in. So I do love this. I mean, granted, I have to remind myself, even though they say it's customizing the lock screen, I think they're going to give you like 6 different fonts to choose from.
Yep.
So it's not,
Right.
again, it's Apple customization. It's not
Right.
like what you'd see with Android or anything else. But I did like what they could let you do with photos, where you could actually
Oh,
choose
super
a
slick.
photo to drop in there. But if it can detect that there is an actual person in your photo, then you get this cool effect like the one you see on the far left on the screen, where the time or some of the stuff can actually be behind the person.
Hmm.
And it's being using machine learning to identify who is the person and what's the background. And it's a nice touch. It's a nice,
No,
classy
it's
touch
super
to it. It
slick.
just gives a really great look. So
And
I'm
also keep
excited
in
about
mind
it.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, they do the lockdown. I mean, again, we've got to kind of play both sides here, right?
Yeah.
Mac locks things down so that you don't screw it up, and you don't.
Yeah.
And again, they don't want their products to be seen by others out in the world looking crappy, right? So
Hmm.
they lock down that here's the fonts you're able to use, here's the
Hmm.
versions you're able to use, and we're going to make sure that it doesn't look crappy because you can see some Android phones because they're allowed to be changed in all different ways. People do change them in often ways, and they may not work that well, or they may not look that good. So, there's a give and take here. But I'm so
Yeah.
happy that they finally realized that this was, an area that we could use,
Yeah.
and now we can get more information from it. So I can imagine myself
Absolutely.
having my next meeting, being dynamically put on there, my watch battery life, so that I don't have to slide that anywhere. I can always tell, like, ooh, that's going to be an issue, or the AirPod battery life. I just think there's some incredibly cool things that can go on there. Now, Alan, one quick question on this, and we can,
Hmm.
maybe get to some of the questions later. But what do you think is going to happen with the battery life here? Because this is now a
I've got a
dynamic
question on
thing
that.
that's occurring.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've got a
yeah,
question on that too, because I mean, the idea with the lock screen is it's always, but has been historically fairly static, except for just notifications.
right.
And then it shuts itself off or turns off after a couple minutes. When you've got a live sports score that you're now watching on your lock screen and you obviously want it to stay active, you could be looking at a battery hit. I mean, you could
Yep,
be looking at a little
yep,
more battery drain than you expect with all the customization, all the complications or gadgets or widgets running on that lock screen. It could have an impact. I
yeah,
think that's a good question or a good thing
yeah,
to keep in mind with for sure.
yep.
Yeah.
So just be
Let's
aware,
talk.
right? That's
Yeah,
going to be a concern. Yep.
absolutely. Let's talk about something else I know we're interested in, Brian. That is, let me scroll on down to find it, and that is messages.
Hmm.
So messages, I think anybody who uses an iPhone, or I mean uses any phone, but obviously you're familiar if you use an iPhone with the Apple Messages. They did add really three main things to the Messages app on your iPhone or on iOS. Number one, you can edit a message now. Like when this new system rolls out, be able to edit a message. So for example, you type, you hit send. Oh my gosh, I just made a really dumb typo. Go back and edit it, and it will then show the edited
Show up
message
correctly.
to the people
Yep.
on the other chain. Now, it doesn't stop your first one from going through. If they see it immediately when it pops on their screen, they're going to see the
Yeah.
typo. But if you fix the typo, they will then see, as soon as it's done, they will see the updated version of your text message. So that's nice, just to kind of help
Hmm.
with some possible little minor embarrassments. Now, if you want to help protect yourself against some bigger embarrassments, and they don't have a screen up for this, but I know we can talk about that. There is one where it's basically you can unsend your text
Yeah.
message.
Yeah.
So let's say you sent a text message to somebody and then you realized, oh, I sent it to the wrong person. You can then tell it to unsend it. It will vanish from the other person's message chain. Now, again, if they saw it when it popped up, they still saw it.
Right.
But if you want to have it pulled back to where they won't see it if they aren't looking at it for a little bit longer, you can have it disappear. All right.
Yeah.
Brian, I just had this happen to me. Seriously, on Sunday.
Ooh.
I I sent a message, and luckily I was able to clear it out and make sure it didn't get me in too much of hot water. But I met somewhere with some people, and I'm sending a message that I think I'm sending to one of my sons. It actually gets sent to the host of the place I'm at right now, and it was commenting on something going on at this event. And luckily, it was cryptic enough that I don't think they picked up on it. But I could have really dealt with that unsending
Yeah.
right away.
And be
So
like,
we have a
oh my
great
gosh, I'm so
question.
sorry. My son
I
stole
know.
my phone and did
I
some
know. It's like,
crazy
oh,
thing
my
to it. So
son's
sorry
just
about
writing
that.
this
Yeah.
crazy stuff.
Crazy.
What are you going to
Yeah.
do? Kids,
Hmm.
We do have a good question on this particular function from Shane Flint. Wasn't there
Yeah.
a time limit on the ability to unsend? It's a good question. Brian, do you recall, was there a time limit on that?
I do not remember that, but I can look that up while
Yeah,
we
we'll look it
chat. I
up
don't
and see.
remember that.
I think there might have been. I know on the email, we're going to get to email, and you can unsend an email. There is a time limit on that. We're going to check on messages and see what they said with that. Good
Yeah.
call.
So Alan, real quick, I just want to mention I have questions on these two specifically, right? Before you get to
Okay.
the next one, which I love. But on these two, I have some major concerns, and I'm really interested to see how Apple goes about doing this, right? Let me give you a scenario. Say, harassment text that someone sends to someone else,
Mm-hmm.
and then afterwards goes and removes it or goes and edits it so that it takes out some of the things.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a log that will show the original one for example, the authorities or something like that? So
Yeah, it's
if
true.
there's kids that are sending harassing text to one another, and then they go in and realize, oh, someone caught me, let me edit it to say something nice. I get very nervous about this,
Now,
that
wouldn't it be, and again, we're speculating here. I'm not an expert in how the communication document tracking works with this, but I'm assuming because it's using carriers, those carriers are still getting a log of every text sent back and forth.
right,
So even
right.
though you personally have chosen to unsend and it has disappeared in theory from that other person's phone, the message was still relayed and has to be documented and tracked somewhere, I would imagine. So, but you bring up a
I
good
hope so.
point. If
Yeah.
that's not the case, that is as much as they talked about in the keynote about having some new features to really help people stay private and safe, um, and some really nice things they rolled out for that. That would be a question mark. That could be a gotcha
Yeah.
on the text
Yeah.
chain. You're right about that.
Well, I mean, because honestly, most of the issues that have happened with kind of digital harassment in the last several years have been from Snapchat, and the whole purpose of that was, I'm going to show you something, but it's going to go away, so you have no record of it unless
Right.
you take a screenshot and all of that stuff.
It's
So,
true.
I think that's a concern. I'm hoping they have some sort of solution, which I'm sure they do. I mean, Apple is very much into privacy, so I don't think that'll be a concern.
Yeah.
Really quickly, Shane, I'm seeing it looks like 15 minutes. That you have 15 minutes
Okay.
to unsend a message.
15 minutes. So that's good
Yeah.
to know. So it's not something where you could text
Yep.
and then the next morning be like, I shouldn't have sent that.
Yeah, this isn't a drunk text help. There are apps for that, Alan. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've
there
seen
are.
that, but there are apps
Mhm.
where that if I send something after a certain time of night, it actually puts into a folder and doesn't go
Yeah.
through until the next morning until I, verify
Smart
it with
move.
someone else, or I have to
Yeah.
have one of my friends verify that it's okay to send. But
So this is really
I
meant
think
for
it's
those
good.
times where, honestly, this is really meant for I sent a text to the
The
wrong
oops,
person.
the oops.
And
Yep,
I noticed
yep,
it right away after I sent it. That's really
yep,
the need here. So with this,
yep.
couple more things with messages. You can unread a message, and what that basically means
Yes.
is you're happy about this.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Finally.
basically,
Mm,
imagine the idea that you have your phone, you unlock it, and a text message had come in, and you see it, but it's not really one you want to respond to right now, or you don't want to have to deal with it. You're going to try to work on it later. Unfortunately, it is now showing up as red, which means it's not going to be highlighted for you. It's not going to be indicated in any way. You now have, with iOS 16, you'll have the ability to unread that message, which means it'll still have the little blue dot saying it is an
yep.
unread messages. So if you're filtering your messages and just want to see your unread ones, it will still stay unread. It's a great way to make sure it stays at the top of your visibility when you come to your messages and
Yeah.
doesn't get lost in the shuffle with a bunch of other ones.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, it's
Alan, I'll
good.
tell you why I'm so excited about this
Yeah, please
because,
do.
I mean, I've been asking for it for, well, asking, I've been
Mhm.
saying that this is a big miss, and partly because of the way that I have gotten to use messages. I mean, messages have now become the email of, our current generation, right? It's the way in which we
Mhm.
communicate, and people will send information that they want you to get to, maybe not right now, but as soon as you get a chance to do that. But the way that we interact with our phones is we open them up, and then if we open it up right to that same screen where that message was coming through, oops, now I don't have any way of reminding myself to come back to this later. And I just think that was a huge miss up to this point. And maybe they did it to try to teach people about messaging and kind of make it more of a something. Hey, I'm going to engage with my phone. I'm not going to wait till later. I'm going to do it now. Do it now. Do now. And now I think they realize that we have enough lock into our phones that we won't worry about this. But the other thing, Alan, is I don't know if you use the favorites on messages where you have some people that are up in
Yeah.
the pinned up to the top.
Mhm.
But if they're pinned, one of the things that's problematic that I'm noticing now is by the way you're pinned up there,
Hmm.
is
Thank
that
you.
if you send me a text, it puts a little blue dot next to your picture to tell me there's a new one there. But if I've already seen it,
Mhm.
then I don't, in the list, you can always see you can see the most recent language right under the text. So you're
Mhm.
seeing it's from this person and you see a little bit of that. That's a reminder to me to go, oh, yeah, that's right. That one came in recently. But if you send something most recent, because you're in my favorites or pinned up top, I don't see that you're one of the more recent messages, even if I've already read it. So I lose all of
Mhm.
that. And I think this is going to be so helpful to use messages as a way of truly communicating like, hey, I'm going to look at this later. I see it, but I want to look at this again later and want to make sure I don't forget about it. So I think it's great. It's
Good.
probably my most favorite thing of the entire keynote. So
Wow, big
yeah,
talk, big
yeah,
Brian.
yeah.
Well, that's messages for the most part. I mean, there's a few other enhancements they made with messages. I think those are the three big kind of takeaways there. Let's talk about the wallet just for a moment too. I thought a couple of interesting things here that we saw with the wallet on your iPhone system. So one thing is not really shown in the image here, but uh, more expanded use of being able to put ID cards in your wallet. So making it even easier if your state where you live or any other ID cards you have access to, if they allow that to be done, then it can be loaded on wallet and used very easily. I love this idea of that if you use Apple Pay to purchase things, it can actually feed the receipts and track your orders directly into your wallet app. So it can actually pop up notifications from Apple saying, "Hey, this item that you bought, wherever you may have bought it from, is being delivered or is expected to arrive on this
Mhm.
date." So it's integrating with their ordering system of the websites you bought it from. If you use Apple Pay to pay for something online, you also got the option of pay later on things, anything we use on Apple Pay. If it's a splitting the cost of your purchase into 4 different payments over 6 weeks with no interest or fees. So if it's something where it just makes better financial sense to spread that out over a 6-week period with no interest. It's simple to do within the wallet. They actually just rolled that capability in. I loved hearing the fact that it does not affect the actual vendor. The vendor's still getting
Yeah.
the money for the
Yeah.
item they sold. Apple's the one taking it on, saying we're going to let the payment be spread out over 6 weeks.
Sure.
So
Yeah. I mean, they're
I thought that
becoming a
was
bank,
nice.
right? They're
Yeah.
becoming a
I mean,
bank, which is
yeah, they're sitting
makes
on
sense
that.
when
They're
you have that
using
much
it.
money,
They're able
right?
to build from that. Yeah.
Right.
So a couple things I thought were nice with the wallet function there.
Hmm.
Let's roll back up to maps. The one thing I was wanting to say about maps, and then Brian, if you've got anything to share on there that I loved with this is adding multi stops on a direction routing. So again, what we're talking
Finally.
about is
Yeah.
you want to go to the beach. Okay. You put in Wrightsville Beach as your destination on maps, but you got to stop in Charlotte on the way to pick up somebody, or you're going to do something on the way. So you need to make sure you're stopping there at a particular place. So now you can add multiple stops along your route and it will guide you to those multiple stops, still giving you the most efficient way to get there, but understanding that you have these different spots to go along. I think
Yeah.
you can add up to 15 of these stops
Yeah. That's great.
en route.
Hmm.
That's wonderful.
Yep.
So if you're really planning a really complex trip or you've got a lot of things to do, just punch them all in. It's okay, Apple, guide me where to go now. And it will take you from stop to stop, just like you put it in there. I think
Yeah.
it's great. Yeah.
Yep. No, I mean, echoing earlier, it's about time, right? I mean,
Okay.
this is why Google Maps has been a better maps program up to this point. Is they've been doing this for years, right? Where you can go in and add in a stop along the way. What I don't know, and Alan, and maybe you can remind me if you happen to notice this, did it allow you right now the if you're using Apple Maps and you're navigating to somewhere and then you decide along the way I need to go somewhere else along the way, being able to add that stop, currently you can do that. You can say add a stop, right? But you can just say things like gas. I need gas, right? It only gives you very limited options like gas, coffee. maybe
Oh,
there's
well,
maybe
yeah.
there's four or
Yeah.
five, right? That I can
You can
say,
say
show me that.
search near where I am and find a gas station near me in this area. And it can
But
take you there.
I
They're
mean, while
driving.
you're
Yeah.
navigating, right?
Yeah.
Whereas your Google Maps, you can be navigating, you can say add a stop now, and it'll say search, right? So I could actually search for anything that I'm wanting along the way, as opposed to just the limited ATM, gas, those things. And I'm hoping that this will allow that to happen, where they're saying now you want to add a stop, and add it mid trip, great. Here's a search engine so you can actually search for where you really want to go. I'm hoping they open that up as part of this.
I
So
hope so too.
I'm super excited. Maps
Yeah.
is getting really, really good.
I
So
think it's
I'm,
great.
yep,
There are a lot of other enhancements with maps we're not going to go into, but you can certainly check them out on the website or go watch the
yep.
keynote and see those as well. Okay. Here's probably my number one favorite item. If I had to go ahead and predict, Brian, item I'm the happiest about, and it's so simple, but it makes a huge difference. If you have a family on iCloud, which I do, there's 4 of us in the household. We all have a iCloud. Each of us have our iCloud account that is part of a family, which means we can share apps that we purchase with one another and so forth. I've never understood why you can't easily share photos with family members. You can. I mean, I can select them and send them to them. But if I wanted to put them into a place where all of the family members have access to this bank of photos, well, now you do. It's simple. It's sharing. You have a shared library within your family. So if I go out and I'm with the family and I'm taking photos of us out at a lake, and so does my wife, she's taking photos, we can actually indicate that we want to put our photos, both of our sets of photos, into that family library. And now everybody in the family, our kids and us, all have access to those photos in one
Yeah.
place. Um, what I love even better is that there's actually, when you are taking a photo, there's now going to be a little toggle button up in the corner and say, well, when I take these photos, go ahead and start saving them to that family shared album. So you don't have to even think about it afterwards. So if you're somewhere, you're at an event, you're at a trip, you're whatever, touring something, you say, you know what, anything I take here, let's go ahead and just dump it up to that family shared library. You can just go ahead and turn that on and have it do it automatically. So I think it's great.
Yep. Very
It's going to
cool.
save a lot of duplication because I guarantee you between my wife and I, we have tons of basically the same photos in our libraries taking up space because we've shared them with each other. Now this is just a nice way to make sure we have them in one place and we don't have to worry about duplicating everywhere else or having to coordinate our photo library.
Yep. No,
But to you, Brian, is this appealing to you?
yeah, I'm super excited about it. I don't have the family size that you have, but I can certainly see this helping out with my wife and I when, I love the idea that if we're both in the same place and but we're both taking pictures, that maybe there should be some way in which that not only are those both going to go into the same spot, but maybe it'll even start to eventually notify us. Be like, I'm taking a picture and it says, by the way, Laura's here taking the same picture, right? Do you really need to take up your hard drive space on this right now? And that's what I would love to eventually get to. If it makes it simple for like, hey, we're all here. Imagine how you go to a family reunion and all of these people are in your contacts, and eventually it gets to the point where you're taking pictures and maybe even notifies everybody there to say, hey, by the way, Alan's taking pictures. And he's already said that he's willing to share these with anybody that's here, and it just automatically kind of gets to that point. I think we're getting to that point where it just makes it simple, that we're not having everybody with their phone out taking pictures, that there's some collaboration that's occurring. So yeah, I'm excited. I think that's great.
Yeah. Now, granted, there's a lot of other things that happened within the iOS listing, a lot of other features. These were really the ones I think that kind of stood out for us that could be the most, I think the ones we're eager to dig into and start using once they become available, or they're solving issues that we kind of felt like have been there for a while. And, granted, like you said, Brian, some of these are either just catching up to what Android and other phone systems allowed, or maybe they're fixing things that Apple really didn't have under control in the first place.
Yes. Yep.
The whole sharing photos between your family members, I don't understand why that wasn't done earlier. I'm happy they're doing it now, but a little bit of it is fixing what they need to fix, and I get that as well. So that's okay. Let's do this, Brian. Let's move on to the iPad OS,
sure,
if we can.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna look and see. I'm looking to see right now on the website how I can pull up some of the things regarding iPad. There we go. Awesome. Okay, so iPadOS, a few features. Most of the features we talked about with iOS that for the iPhone are ones that a lot of those are getting carried at OS as well. So it's a little repetitive, some of the things, but let's kind of mention a couple things that may be a little more unique for this. The biggest thing, the big selling point that they're talking about with the iPadOS version 16, let me see if I can get us down to where that is. Stage. So Stage Manager was rolled out as kind of a new, quote, revolutionary way to use your iPad for productivity purposes. The idea with this is that you can basically have, as you can see here, various levels of windows open, and you can actually resize those windows to look the way you want them to look on your iPad. And you can have overlapping windows on top of each other. So just think about if you're a typical iPad user, iPad is pretty much a one function at one time kind of device. They rolled it out to where you could do a split screen and have two items happening, and that was nice. This expands it to where you technically, from what I understand, even when you add a external monitor to the iPad, you can get up to 8 applications kind of in your view simultaneously. So not only is it allowing you to have those overlapping windows and you can toggle between which one you want to work on, but also if you can see on the item icon we have up here on the screen, it's taking other windows or other applications that are open, and it's got them tiled on the left-hand side. So it's also a little bit of a switcher between those different views. Yeah. So it's really trying to help with multitasking, trying to help it become a little closer to a desktop type computer environment for you. Brian, your thoughts? I can't remember if you are an iPad user right now or not, but is this?
I am. Yeah, I'm an iPad user. This is exciting to me. The Stage Manager portion itself is not that exciting yet. And again, Stage Manager is that whole, you're working on something and then you have these others tiled who you can easily write off stage basically and pull them one at a time to kind of swap them out. And you'll see that that's coming up in macOS as well. But But just the fact that they are now allowing overlapping windows, that you could have something that is still full sized, uh, overlapping to something else, like I do with my windows as I use a computer, right? It's like I can see notes are back here, and I can see that this web browser is here, and I can just quickly see them both or click between them and kind of highlight one over the other. I think it just makes it so that this is becoming much more like a computer, and well, maybe I won't say more like a computer. It's doing the things that have kept people from using it like a computer.
Mm-hmm.
So really allowing this to now become a daily driver for a lot of people. And the reason
Yeah.
it couldn't before is that it was so clunky, helpful but clunky to say, oh, I'm going to drag it up and I'm going to make it, size it, spaced out. 3/4 of the screen is this, and you're only dealing with one canvas basically that you can divide up. Now you've got multiple layers that can really be used, and it's yeah, it just takes another step to where a very powerful device, the iPad right now, is incredibly powerful. And I don't even think people realize how powerful it is because it hasn't been able to do
Yeah.
this sort of thing. And it wasn't a limit of I mean, it's got the processor. It wasn't a limit of the processor for a while. It's been a limit of the iOS, and now the iOS is kind of getting out of the way to let it shine. So I think it's great.
Can we go ahead and throw out the really kind of disappointing part of all this, though?
Yeah, go
I
for it.
believe
You want
you
to
have
be a
to
Debbie
use.
Downer? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you have to have a version of iPad Pro or iPad that runs a M1 chip, is
Yeah,
my understanding.
yeah,
And so that is going to limit it to just being more recent iPads that people have bought that has that. It's more of a harbinger of good things to come with it. Unfortunately for me, my iPad Pro, I don't think I'll be able to take advantage of this. It's not an M1
yeah, yeah.
powered device. But again, I mean, I get it. Sometimes you're building things forward, and you got to cut loose of the past and move forward with things. But and of course, that helps them sell more iPads. I'm sure they're not
You
opposed to that.
think? Yeah.
On that same note, with the Stage Manager, Brian, having an external display
Hmm.
added to your iPad. Now, you've been able to do this before, but it was mirroring your iPad screen or using it as a player. Like if you had a movie on it, you can play it on the external screen. This now with iOS or iPad OS 16 and a compatible iPad with an M1 chip, you plug up an external monitor and it treats it as an external monitor. You can extend your view to where, as you can see on the example here, they've got a program pulled up on the actual iPad, but then they've got a different program pulled up on the monitor, actually two other programs. My understanding is here's where you could actually have up to 8 applications visible to you across the two screens at one time, which is pretty interesting. So
Yeah,
it's
Alan,
not as good. Yeah. Go
did
ahead.
you catch that? How do you interact with the information that's on the external monitor? Is it mouse only, I assume?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Mouse only. You have to kind of, you just move you just kind of, if you're using a trackpad or something, yeah, or
Yeah.
trackpad or
Yeah.
mouse, it scrolls up and you go up to your top monitor. You're right. You can't,
And I
obviously
think
you
that's
can't touch,
yeah.
your
That's
external monitor.
yeah.
Um, so you will have to have some sort of input device connected to your iPad to make this all work the right way.
Right. And this is
Yeah.
where I think it loses me a little bit.
Mhm.
But it also means that you just have to learn to interact with the iPad differently. I mean, the iPad has always been to me the beauty of I can have a keyboard to type, but I can also have finger.
Mhm.
Um, but I guess the flip side of that is that this would only be something you would use when you go to a desk that actually has that external monitor. So
Right.
if
Yeah.
that's where your mouse is and it's automatically Bluetooth in and you're playing with it and then you unplug and go and now you're back to touch only. But no, I don't know. It felt a little wonky to me because I could see
Yeah.
myself wanting to interact with my iPad on the finger and then realize, well, I can't put my finger any further up. So how do I get over there unless I go and now find the mouse? So
Yeah.
anyway,
It
I
does
think it's
seem to
just
me
going to
it's
take a lot of learning as people go on with this. Yeah.
it does seem to me it's more of a situation where, like you said, you have a fixed location with the monitor and maybe a mouse or trackpad that you're
Yeah.
going to pop your iPad into and use it in a more desktop environment. But
Yeah.
then you unplug it and you use it as a touch portable device like it's designed to be, away from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the options are there. This doesn't prevent you from using an iPad like you normally do on your own. Just gives you some greater capability, but you would have to have the mouse or trackpad to do that. Yeah. Only other thing I wanted to mention on iPadOS, Brian, I don't think there's a slide on here for it. Well, yeah, there's a little bit of a notion
There you
of
go.
it.
Yeah.
It's called display scaling mode. And this is what I personally am excited about. If you can imagine on your iPad, I don't really know of a good way to showcase this. They're going to have an option now on the iPad to change the resolution of your display. And what that means is that if you wanted to try to have more things visible on your iPad screen, you could actually scale your resolution up or down to allow more things to be on your screen. So that will mean like fonts and letters can get smaller, but it also means more things would be able to be shown. Almost like if you're on a web page and you know how you can zoom in or zoom out of the web page, that same kind of function where like things are getting smaller, but you're getting more things on the web page. That's the way the resolution scaling will work on the iPad. So they call it display scaling mode. For somebody like me, I like having a lot of stuff on there. I don't, even my phone, I keep the font size pretty small. I like having just a lot more I can see on a screen at one time. This is going to allow you to do a lot more with that with the iPad
Yep.
now. So I think that's pretty nice.
It's slick. Yep.
Yeah. Brian, again, most of the other stuff on the iPad were very similar to what we already talked about with iOS. There's a lot of synergy. A lot of the things we talked about in iOS are getting rolled over to the iPadOS as well. So it's a great upgrade for the iPad, but we've talked about a lot of the items already.
Yeah.
If it's okay with you, let's go over to macOS. So this is the actual operating system on the Mac computer, which, you and I are kind of the one, I don't know about you, Brian, but it's the one I get the most excited about just because I still ultimately am a Mac guy. I love my iPhone, but I get my work done on my Mac. I actually am productive on my Mac. My phone is more of an input and viewing device. So I always get the most excited when I hear about the Mac upgrades. So the latest Mac operating system is going to be called Ventura. I should note that all of these are scheduled to come out in September. Is that what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, I heard early fall. So yeah, I would assume September.
September-ish should be the time frame that all of these will be released. And they're normally released within either at the same time or within a few weeks of each other, coming out. So
I think only the hardware is coming out earlier, right? I think the hardware is available to order pretty soon, but the software I think is early fall. Yep.
Well, let's talk about Mac OS.
Yeah.
Brian, let's talk about Mail, because this is I need you to help me understand something here, okay?
Yep.
Because I could get really excited about this. I am not currently using the Mac built-in Mail because of a couple of functions that I've been missing. One of those functions is to schedule when I send something, because I don't always, if I'm working sometimes late at night or other times, or I don't want the email to show up in somebody's inbox until a certain time.
Yep.
I need the capability of scheduling that sending of email. So the new Mail on OS Ventura will do that, which is great. You have it also an undo send, kind of like we talked about with messages, where I want to undo the sending of that. You have a time limit on that as well, but you can still hit that undo send, and it will make that message disappear from that other recipient's box. Now, Brian, here's my question though. I am a big guy on snoozing of emails. It's the whole reason I have used so many other different email programs and not used OS 10 Mail or OS Mail for the Mac because of its ability to not snooze emails, meaning an email shows up in my inbox. I do not need to look at it. I don't need to address it. I don't need to deal with it right now. I can snooze it till the weekend. Maybe if it's something I want to work on over the weekend. When the weekend comes around, the email pops back in my inbox automatically at that time. I love that function. I use it daily.
Yep.
So my question, Brian, is they announced a feature on their new mail program called Remind Me, which the way they described it in the keynote, it sounds a lot like snoozing. It said you can basically do a Remind Me, and it's going to bring that email back up to you at a different time. They even showed when you right-clicked on the mail, it gave you an option of what time. Do you want it to be tonight? Do you want it to be tomorrow? Do you want it to be whatever? Sounds like snoozing to me. I don't know if you got the same impression or not, if they're handling it differently.
I hope it acts that way. I mean, that again, that's the hope, right? That's the one feature that I am very frustrated that I don't have in Mail. And you and I've talked about
Mhm.
before. I mean, I think I got you kind of into my email fetish there for a while of different email programs, and I think you're still using Spark. Is that right?
I am.
Okay, yeah, and I was using Spark as well, but unfortunately, it doesn't work with our university system very well, so I stopped. But the snooze was really, really helpful, and I'm hoping that that's the case. I'm hoping they've taken this and said, you know what, maybe there's a different way in which they're handling it. Alan, part of the beauty of what they were showing with Mail also was the idea that there's different ways in which you can filter things now, right? Like the focus versus non-focused, and I think that then allows them to hide things for a certain amount of time. So
Mm.
maybe it's not that what the other mail clients do is they put it into another mailbox and they say, okay,
Yeah.
this goes into this mailbox, and then we basically look into that mailbox every so often to pull things back out. Maybe they're just having creative ways of hiding things. So I'd be really interested to see what would happen with some of these reminders, because one of the things about snooze, and you've mentioned this before, is anytime that you use a snooze feature with an email, be very careful because you need to use that same snooze feature and same email client across all your devices. Because
Yeah.
if you're
Right.
snoozing it with Spark on Mac OS, but then you're
Mhm.
using Apple Mail on your iPhone, it'll still be there. It's not been snoozed. You get confused, right? And maybe this is their way of dealing with that, to say, listen, if you're using our mail on all your devices, it'll hide appropriately as part of the focus and then come back at certain times. We're not going to create a new,
Which
mailbox, or maybe so. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't
Maybe
know.
they will.
I love the idea of it. I just want to see it in action.
Yeah,
So
I
that'll
agree.
be
I
that.
agree. I'm
That'll be a
hoping.
bit. If they pull it off to where that works, or it has that same functionality idea, then I'm on board. I'm
You're
back
back
on
in.
OS 10
Yep.
mail. I'm ready to go. Let's
Yeah.
do it.
Yep. Yep.
I'm very excited about that.
Yep. I'm hoping.
Something else with Mac OS. Well, the Stage Manager. Let me see if I
Hmm.
can bring up a slide of that. We already talked about the Stage Manager with iPad, but you do have that same capability. Here we go on the
Yep.
Mac.
Yep.
Same idea in that obviously on a Mac, you've already had tiled windows, you've already had overlapping screens, which was new for the iPad. But on the Mac, you can now kind of create your own workspaces. So let's say there's a certain group of applications that you work alongside each other, or you have a certain, I'm in my creative mode and I've got these 5 applications I'm going to work on to do things in that creative space. You can create that workspace here, arrange your different groups of apps around a different task or project. You can arrange them, resize them, have them different shapes on your screen. And then whenever you want to toggle over to another layout, you've got them running along the left-hand side as little thumbnails. You click on it
Yeah.
and then all the applications switch out and all your views switch to this new layout that you've got.
Yep.
Um, Brian, this one I don't know about because we just Mac has had so many iterations of ways that they've tried to help you organize or be more productive on your workspace.
Right.
I've seen spaces, I've seen launch pad, I think is what they called it.
Yeah. Multiple
Um,
desktops and all that stuff.
Multiple
Yep.
desktops, so many different ways of doing this. I just don't know if this is the one that's going to stick or not, because none of the other ones, in
Yeah.
my mind, have really caught on and become the way that people use their Mac anymore.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
um,
my only hope, Alan, is that they've realized that other people don't use those other features like they thought they would, right? Things like
yeah,
multiple desktops and all of that. I mean, I know some people that use multiple desktops all the time, right? Where it's like, okay, this is
mhm,
my play desktop, this is my work desktop, and I just swipe the forefinger over or whatever and be able to do it. But I think one of the big challenges has always been that I can't remember where those other desktops are. Like, how many swipes over do I go? And this kind of solves that, right? I have a little tray that
yeah,
says, here are the
it's
things that
true.
are in waiting. You want to just quick change. You don't have to get all the other stuff out of your way. You can actually just switch from one to the other. So I think there's a benefit for that. I'm hopeful, but I'm with you. I mean, I'm keeping myself from getting excited because I always got excited about the other ones, like the focus modes and all these things, and then I never use them. And so I'm hopeful that this is different, but I'm not willing to say it is yet. So.
Okay, well, jury's still out on that one. We will certainly see, but I'm already ready to give this the winner. Probably my second most excited feature I've
Ooh,
seen
yep.
for the Mac OS is the idea of the continuity camera. Brian, you want to describe for us what this is? Because I was
Yeah.
going to get super excited when
I
I
mean, I
do it
was,
myself.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was excited as well. But this is a wireless way to use your iPhone as your webcam, and to take advantage of those fantastic cameras that are built into the iPhone now, the multiple lenses that are built in. Um, and as you can see here, that I think they even said that there's going to be little mounts that they'll sell and be very Apple like, to
Probably
kind of
for
hang on your
$50.
$50 for a little piece of plastic
Yep.
that'll be your tray. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, Alan, you and I actually, I was thinking, we both have kind of our magnet cases and everything. It would be kind of cool to
Mhm.
create a way in which there's a magnet version where you can kind of snap it up there. But anyway,
Yeah.
the idea is that this is wireless, that I could just select and say, I want to use my phone as the webcam and be able to do that. There are other things. Alan's actually, you've provided us at least one in the past, of a
Well,
service that does this by wire. Is that right?
yes and no. There's three
Okay.
different applications I currently use to connect my phone to use it as a video camera because I actually use it in my studio production at different places.
Yep.
One of them is Camo Studio. That one requires a
Camo.
wired connection.
Yep.
It's probably my favorite quality wise, but it does require a wired connection. There is another one called Epoch Cam
Epoch
that
Cam.
will
Right.
allow you to go wired or wireless, but the wireless has been a little temperamental the times I've used it. And then a third one, Detail, which I tried to do as a brothers and tech suggestion on the show, and it crapped out on us during that. So I have not used that one as much since then.
Yep.
Uh, what I like about this is it's native built in. You don't have to have any additional software or buy any other
Yep.
app. It's wireless, so meaning you do not have to be plugged in. As long as you're on the same iCloud account and in proximity of each other, it's going to see it and use it as a camera. The other thing I like about this, I was hoping that they have a demo of it. Let's see if they do. Yes. The thing that I've not seen any other camera do when you turn your phone into a camera or your webcam is because the iPhone, at least newer ones in the last few years, have a wide angle lens as well as a standard lens on the phone. It actually is going to use your wide angle lens to create a desk view simultaneously. So imagine you're on a webcam, a Zoom call, and you want to show them something in front of you, what you're writing, what you're putting together, what you're playing, if you're playing an instrument, something like that. It's using that wide angle lens to actually create another view down on your desk right below you. And then within the program, wherever you are, Zoom or whatever, you can toggle between them. So you could have your face view and you could
Yep.
have your desk view and you could show them at the same time. So you can actually do demonstrations. You can think about teachers, especially during the pandemic when they were teaching from home and they had to actually demonstrate or show things. I mean, how great would it have been to have that desk view set up? A lot of people I know who try to mimic this have done it by having two different webcams and just having to go and choose between the two webcams in the Zoom or wherever they are. But with this, it's all done within the iPhone camera and it's going to look
Yeah.
really, really nice too. So I
Very
love
slick.
this. I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think it's so much fun.
Yeah. I have questions about how it will work and whether it works. Like, I did read that some people that got their hands on it right away and some of the developer sessions said it kind of crapped out right away and didn't really work the way it was supposed to. But Apple will fix that. But the fact that it's taking a static image, trimming it down, inverting it, presenting it back again, and only providing you a part of it. Now, on that same note, what's really cool, and Alan, I don't know if you caught this or not, but the idea that if I was standing and on a standing desk and I was swaying back and forth, that because it's got this wide angle, it can actually follow me
Mhm.
very similar to what, I think Microsoft Teams does that right now, not very
Yeah,
well, but it does that. The Facebook portal sort of things do that where it follows you, but
sure.
this will actually trim as long because it's gathering everything. very wide. So it can just say, no, we're just going to trim out using some AI and try to figure out where you are and follow you. So if you
Yeah.
sway, you can still be in the center of the screen. So
They
that's
call this
like
center stage. Center
center
stage is the
stage.
name
Thank
of
you.
that.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, plus you get all the benefits of the iPhone camera, like the portrait mode and studio lights and all that are built into the camera on the iPhone can now apply to your Zoom or Microsoft Teams or WebEx meetings by if you use your iPhone as a camera. Now,
Super slick.
you know,
Yeah.
the downside is, I mean, you have if you just have your iPhone and it's your iPhone that you use primarily, it means you do have to go and physically set it up and use it. And obviously, you don't have access to your phone while it's being used as a camera, unless you're somebody like me and I've got 14 iPhones back in my studio. I will gladly take one of them and make that my permanent webcam, always up there,
Yep.
so I never have
Yep.
to worry about losing my own phone. So yeah.
Okay, and
All right.
one other real question
Sure.
that I'm hoping that they solve is that if we do this, because the phone is facing away from us now, I'm hoping that in the corner of the window will show my battery life of the phone, because I could
Good
see the
call.
fact that I
Good
can't
point.
see if it's getting ready
Mhm.
to die, and I'm teaching a 3 hour class, and I would love to know whether or not I am running short of battery or if I need to plug in that sort of thing. So as long as
There's
that
got
is
to be
part of it,
something, but
I'm
I would
very
think that that would have to be a must. They have to do
yeah,
that. So,
yep.
yeah.
All
Brian,
right.
can we flip over to the Watch OS? I mean, and Mac OS again.
Sure.
There were some other things on the Mac. I think those were the main things we wanted to jump out and really talk about. But Watch OS. Let's see if I can get over to the Watch OS. I know it was on here a second ago. Here we go.
Yeah.
Couple of things with the watch. They did talk about the Watch OS, the latest version of it. I believe it is OS 9. Is that right for the watch?
I
Yeah.
think so. Yep. WatchOS
Yep.
9.
Um, you got a couple items maybe we can share about the watch on this? Some
Yeah.
things?
No, I thought, well, it wasn't incredibly exciting what was going on
Mhm.
with the watch, but I think that also shows that they feel pretty happy with where the watch is right now, and they want to make some incremental changes. I was super excited about this, what you're showing right now, which is heart rate zones. And for
Mhm.
anybody who's had um, Garmin's in the past or Polar watches, and really paid attention to kind of triathlon training or some of their marathon training and all of these things in which the training modes really do have to do not just with what's my heart rate, but is my heart rate in the correct zone. And by zones are, if you're going to train and it says I need to work out for 10 minutes in heart rate zone 3, that's just saying that I need to get up to a certain range of my heart rate and really to get the cardio benefit that I want. And so now you can actually set some of those ranges. So rather than you having to look every time as you're running and try to figure out, what is my heart rate and is that where I wanted it to be or not? You could go ahead and set and say, I need to see how much time I was spending in heart rate, zone 3 or zone 4, or in cool down. So I think that was super slick. That's just again catching up with the leaders in the exercise wearables world
Mhm.
that have been doing this forever. But it continues to make it more for the high end trainer as opposed to just the everyday person, right? It allows it to go. There's
Sure.
also some cool things, Alan, about like actually, if you slide up just a little bit there, I think, yeah, it's things like running power. It's starting to recognize some of the cool things about your form. As you see there, it says like it's going to have stride length and ground contact time or oscillation. Those are just ways in which this becomes a real runner's device, where runners are going to go out and actually try to figure out, oh, this was my biomechanics of the way in which I was running. So when they really try to dial that in, for the everyday person, it's not going to matter. But for the fact that they're now trying to become a device that actually works with high end runners, I mean, I'll tell you, Alan, in the past, and you remember when we had, my buddy Jeff Hartman on here before, he was a big runner, marathon runner. He would say, he's like, I love the watch and I love the way that it tracks things, but it can't last a full marathon. Right. I mean, I can't go out and record a full marathon because it'll die, and it doesn't have the power. Sorry, she thinks I'm talking to her. Um, but now, I guess they're finally realizing they're to the point where the battery's getting better. They can actually handle some of these things and make it a real runner's device. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Most of
they're
the enhancements I think seem to be in the fitness realm. There were a couple of items I thought there may be a little more for everybody, whether you're into fitness or not. Medications have really kind of stepped up, both on the watch and how applied to the phone as well. So basically, you can keep track of your medications and have your watch and or phone remind you of your medication schedule, help manage how when your medications are up for refills. Um, it's just kind of nice. I mean, things where
Yeah.
you can actually be able to scan in your medication if your pharmacy provider is kind of allowing this to happen or works with their platform. Scan in your prescription, and it can then take the information, give you all the details about it, and also make sure that you've got a kind of reminder to take it each day, letting you know when it's running low and you need to get a reorder in. So
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure why this was a watchOS thing, because to me that's just a notification that's coming from a health app.
I
But I
think it's
think
just
that
the fact that
they're starting to tap into other things like, hey, your heart rate was high, and we know
yeah,
you're on this, blood pressure, whatever, medication. You need to be aware that the interaction of these things. But it
yeah.
felt a little bit more like just a health
No,
app
I
thing.
agree. I agree. I'm not really sure why they kind of tagged it as watch, unless it's just
Yeah,
they know that most of the reminders you're going to get are going to be coming through your watch when it comes to medication times, or
yeah,
possibly.
yeah,
Uh, Sleep is the other thing I am curious about. They have expanded their use of sleep analysis on the watch to where it will now actually manage your sleep stages, which is when you go to sleep. There's REM sleep, there's core sleep, there's deep sleep. A lot of apps I've used will help you track that automatically, and you can see the next morning kind of what your different levels of sleep were throughout the evening. Well, now the watch with the health app on your phone working together can track all that for you. So your watch will actually better monitor for your sleep stages and then translate that data to your fitness app or health app on your phone to view as well. Um, I like that. I mean, anytime if it means that it's one less app I have to keep separate to do, that's great. And I do
yeah,
think Apple takes health pretty seriously. So I think they should have some good, solid information, but we'll see if it holds up or does as much as some of the other sleep apps you can get right now will do for you. So, so that's really the Watch OS. I mean,
yeah,
there's some new watch faces and feel nice enhancements, visual enhancements. But I think the biggest thing we saw a lot of enhancements on the fitness side or tracking of your workouts or runs.
yeah.
And then sleep and medication seem to be the two things that were other additions to the Watch OS in general. So Brian, I know we're running a little long, but this is all good. I want us
What?
to keep exploring. I
Surprised?
know, just a bit. Um, but there were two other, I guess, quote operating systems that we didn't really talk about yet, and partly because we're not really sure how these are going to come about. I think they look cool, but I don't know if they're going to do everything we're kind of hoping or expecting. And I don't even know if they're here, Brian. Where are they going to be? Were they under
Hmm.
iOS? I think they were under iOS.
Yeah, I probably
I think
was.
they were deep in the list here,
Mhm.
but basically we're talking about the home
HomeKit.
app,
Yep. Yep.
or your
HomeKit.
home kit. How the thing that kind of got us started even talking about on the show here is the whole idea of home automation and how we manage it. So as I scroll down and find the home app, which I know is in here because I saw there it is.
There we go.
So the home app is going to be getting a new version, a whole new interface to it as well. You see a little preview of it on the screen there. Rebuilt, they say, to be more efficient and reliable. That's remains to be seen. Obviously, we haven't actually experienced it and managed it to see how it works. I'm a really big critic of the home app. I have very specific things I'd love to see them do. I can't quite tell if they've done them or not. So I have to really get my hands on this to see for sure. The big thing I was going to say about the home app is that they have kind of come out and announced it officially that there's that consortium of different manufacturers and developers who've created a common standard for home automation devices, and they're calling it Matter. And Apple did announce that with iOS 16 and the home version there, it is going to tap into that Matter platform. Now, what we don't know is how extensive is that going to be? Does that mean that any of these devices that now you see at the store that are Google or Alexa compatible, if they've tapped into that same consortium, that same partnership, are they now going to be available on the HomeKit natively? It was really broad the way they described it in the keynote. They just kind of said, hey, it's going to be a lot more compatible and there's going to be a lot
Yeah.
more accessibility. And that was it. So there's a lot here we don't know yet about the home app and home automation and whether things are going to get improved or not. Um, I like what I see about the interface enhancements,
Yep.
but
Yep.
I just don't know. I mean, again, I like the home app. The first time I saw the current home app being just demonstrated, I got into it. And after you, for a couple of years, you start to realize there's a few things you'd like to see that done differently. So maybe jury's a little out a little
Yep.
too soon on
Jury,
this. And
jury's
Brian,
out for me.
I know you're not a deep
I'm
HomeKit
not.
user. You're on the other platforms there,
Yep.
but
Yep. I am. And my big question is just how Matter is going to be utilized in the future. And if it works out the way it's supposed to, then I know new products will all be kind of on the same standard where you can kind of intermix them all within the same ecosystem. I just don't know, is it backwards compatible? Will I have to buy all new devices in order for this to work, or will it have a way in which it recognizes
yeah.
devices that were only Amazon or only Google before that now kind of come into this world? And I'm guessing probably not. I'm thinking there's probably some hardware element that's going to be required. But yeah, I think I'm going to wait and see on that.
Well, I'm really anticipating getting to play with it because, of course, I love home automation. I love working in HomeKit. I hope it's going to get a lot more content for us to
Yeah,
discuss here in the show. But they really talked about it for maybe 2 minutes in the keynote, and it was very broad and very vague in a lot of the ways they talked about it. So we'll see when it comes out later this
yeah,
fall.
yeah,
The other one that also is going to be one that I think we can just kind of tease a little bit, but there's a lot of question marks still for us about this is the new version of CarPlay. Again, for those not remembering or familiar, CarPlay is Apple's version of when you plug up your phone to your car. If your car is compatible or has compatibility with Apple's CarPlay, when you hook up your phone, it allows there to be a phone-like interface on your computer, on your car dashboard, or on the computer screen in your car. And you can basically control things from your phone, just like your podcast, your music, your maps, all that. It basically integrates your phone into your car interface. And it's
yeah.
just it's great. This new version, the next generation of CarPlay looks amazing.
It looks
Um,
unbelievable.
It really does. If you're seeing the demo right here, we're showing on the screen. This is a car. Now, granted, this is not a car that is widely available right now, or that most of us are going to get, unless we maybe have 80 grand or so to spend on it. But this is where car makers are going to start using more digital panels throughout their dashboard instead of the gauges, the more manual
Yeah,
gauges or other things they've got. And they're going to, if they are compatible with CarPlay, they're going to allow Apple to tap into those. So not just the one little entertainment screen that you normally have for your music and maps and so forth, but things like your odometer and your climate control and all that can be seen through CarPlay.
yeah,
And the idea with it is that you will have complete control over how you want to lay out information on your screens and on your dashboard if your car is of a compatible type and it works with this next generation of CarPlay. So imagine, if CarPlay is interacting with your car and getting things like speed and temperature and other things that, gas level, that CarPlay will actually be able to show that on these modules on your dashboard for you. So you never have to leave CarPlay. That is the one thing, Brian. I've got CarPlay on my car right now and I love it. But if I want to go and use the radio, or if I want to go
yeah,
and
yeah.
adjust the climate or the heating on my seats, I have to leave the CarPlay app on the screen and go to the native car manufacturer interface and do everything there.
Man, I'm so sorry.
I
I mean,
know
it really just
it's really,
sounds brutal.
God,
That
it's
sounds so
really
brutal.
tough.
Gosh.
Thanks. No, I really appreciate that. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
know you
I
feel
mean,
my pain.
I don't know how you live right now, but
I
yeah,
don't even go
good luck to
drive
you,
because
man.
I'm like,
Really,
why? What's the
good luck
point?
to you.
This is barbaric. Um,
uh,
but the idea that I could just leave this interface up and it's giving me all this great information. Plus I customize it. Like you can see on the sample here, they've got not only their tripometer and they've got their odometer up there, but they've got their calendar popping up there and that in their dashboard. They've got the temperature at another city that they're going to up there on the screen, and they even see like their HomeKit status on like their garage door open or closed. I
Yeah.
love this. I love this concept, but I know that I need to temper my expectations because this will be several years down the road. I remember when they first announced CarPlay, it felt like it was forever before I actually saw a car that I could get and drive or be a part of that had that built into it. So I
Yeah.
know we're a ways off, but it's nice to know that they're moving things forward.
Yeah.
So
Let me just really tap in just really quickly to say what makes me most excited about this. Obviously, I don't have CarPlay. I have a much older car and won't get to enjoy this for quite a while. But we're getting closer. And to me, this is the perfect example of where I hope computing goes in the future. And I don't want to spend much time on it because we could go on and on and on. But the way the car play environment should work, or looks like it's going to work, is exactly how I want computers to be operating in the future. I have my phone in my pocket. I get into a car, and that car looks like my dash. That car
mhm.
looks like my layout, right? Exactly like I want computers to be eventually. Eventually, Alan, I want to be able to go to your house, not have to take my laptop with me, borrow your laptop, and know that it's, since my phone is in my pocket, your laptop becomes my operating system, right? It's basically I'm
Yeah,
just using a
right.
shell,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I want that to be the case where we're not having to be so tied into multiple what am I trying to processors, right? That we have
Mhm.
processors and everything that are doing things. You have a phone that can do so much, and this is the example of it, right? That my wife can jump in the car and start it up, and her dashboard comes up, and it
Yeah.
doesn't have to
Yep.
push the button on the side that says, user number one, and having all the things change. It's
Yep.
natural, it's happening, right? I could let a friend borrow it, and if I give them permission, they hop in and it looks like their dashboard, just like their
Mhm.
car at home. Or I go rent a car and it looks exactly like my dashboard layout that I have at home, because it's all being based off of the phone, which is in my
Yeah.
pocket. So
No, I mean,
that's
and
that's
that's
my dream, right?
look, in theory, that's the way CarPlay works already.
Yeah.
If my wife came in and plugged up her iPhone to my car, it's going to show the apps that she has selected to show up on the CarPlay menu, and it's obviously going to be her library of music and so forth.
Right.
This is just expanding it to say now it extends to the dashboard. Now it extends to the
The
rest of the
actual
environment in the
driving
car.
experience, yeah,
Yeah,
becomes
and that
yours.
driving
Yep.
experience can be very personalized based on how you have your
Yeah.
CarPlay saved and
I
set
love
up.
it.
It's
I love it.
exciting. It really is.
Yep.
I did notice, I didn't hear this in the keynote, but it is on the website. Vehicle announcements for the next generation of CarPlay coming in late 2023. So
Yeah.
if the
Yep.
vehicle announcements are not till late 2023, that means we won't see them till 2024, possibly
Right.
2025. So we're a
Yep.
ways off, but
Yep.
fun to
Yep.
see where they're going. It's a great demo when they showed it up on the screen.
It was fantastic. Yep.
So now, Brian, I know we had a lot of stuff there,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the operating systems, and we didn't cover probably a third of the things they mentioned, but I do feel like these are probably the most monumental things or the things that we're seeing the most impact with. But Brian, if I had to ask you, just looking back over everything we talked about, what two or three things are you the most excited about overall? Are you the most
Okay.
looking forward to getting to play with whenever they come out
Yep.
on your device?
Number one, I won't spend much time on because I've already mentioned it. Being able to save messages is new. To me, that's just I mean, that is something, it's not a huge deal, right? It's not a big, update.
Mhm.
But it's one of the most functional things that drives me nuts. So I'm happy about that. I'd say number two, Alan, is the lock screen, because again, I use it all the time, right? We all use the lock screen,
Mhm.
or I should say, we see the lock screen. We don't necessarily get to use it a lot. So I am incredibly excited about how can I make this more functional so that I don't have to always dig into
Yeah.
my phone. I can get more information. And also, we didn't mention, but this is another piece I'm kind of excited about is, focuses has become a big thing within the Mac ecosystem recently,
Mhm.
like a work focus, a home focus. And it doesn't work incredibly well right now because sometimes we work away and work at home. But what I do love is that now when I pick up my phone, you can actually make your lock screens based on your focus. So it's
Yeah.
a much more clear, like I pick up the phone and I know, oh, it's still set to work focus and I'm home now. Let me turn that off, as opposed to seeing the little icons and all of that. And it just could be a way in which your interaction of that changes. And so when I'm at home, yes, show me the Blazer scores. When I'm at work, don't show me those scores. Do this.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a better way of interacting. So
Well, I hope that works. I really want to use the focus feature on the phone.
yeah,
I really do, on the phone, Mac, everywhere. I have not got it to where it works for me, and I found
yeah,
myself more frustrated because it'll be in the different mode than what I expect it to be in because I forgot to switch it, and it's more annoying. So
yeah. Well, I
I
think,
want
like
it
I
to
said,
work though.
this will be
I want
more
it to work.
obvious to you when you're
Good.
in one or the other.
Hope so.
And I'd say that maybe the third one is more just aspirational, is CarPlay. I think that the future of that is so exciting.
Yeah.
I have several others that I'm excited about, but I'm going to use those as my top three. Those are the things that I was most excited about. What about you?
Yeah. Um,
You
I
mentioned
think,
photos and
well,
share.
if shared photos with the family, probably number
Yep,
one.
yep,
Continuity camera, number two,
yep,
just because I am really excited about using that. Number three is a question mark for me, but if they figured out how to do a snooze type
yeah.
capability on the email program,
That's pretty big.
then that'll be my number three. So that's my
Yep.
hopeful, those three. Um, yeah, I think there's just some great things. The thing is, as I look at all of this, Brian, with everything they announced, it wasn't that there was any one thing that was just revolutionary.
Right.
Everything's very evolutionary, but they hit on so many different little things that collectively you look at it are like, yeah, all these things have some improvement on the way we use our devices. And I guess that's the
Usability.
ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're improving interaction and usability, I think,
Yeah.
which
I
was
think it's great.
awesome. Yeah.
Are there big questions you've got still right now? I
Yeah, well,
mean,
I've got a bunch of questions, but I mean, I think just the keys for me, where I mentioned like unsend and edit messages, I'm really kind of concerned about how that could be used in the wrong way. So I'm
manipulated or
hoping that
could be. Yeah.
there'll be some safety behind that. Obviously, we mentioned the backwards compatibility of HomeKit. I think that's still a
Mhm.
question to me. Is this going to be an exciting thing, or am I going to have to spend a lot of money in order to
Yeah.
really make this work? And several other things that came up really had to do to me with battery life. That if I'm using my phone as my webcam, or I'm using this lock screen that's more interactive and
Mhm.
dynamic, what's going to happen to battery life? And is battery life really going to hit? Luckily, the new phones, their battery life is really, really good,
Yeah,
but
but it's also
it could be
it's
bad.
kind of a balancing act. I mean, you get more
Yeah,
battery life, but if you're getting a system that uses that battery life more,
yeah,
then you don't really enjoy the benefit of a much longer battery life. So,
yeah.
yeah,
So those are some of my questions.
I'm with you on those. I'm very questioning the HomeKit enhancements, what the
Yeah,
interface is going to look like and work, and like you said about backwards compatibility with other HomeKit devices or other devices from other manufacturers. Are they going to be able to work backwards, or do I have to go out and get all new devices? And then that whole main stage, just because it was such a big part of the keynote, they spent a lot of time talking about it for both the Mac and the iPad. I like any ideas to make things more productive, but I really have to sit there and play
yeah,
with it and see if I can make it work for me because previous versions have just not. I am still a very bare bones user when it comes to interface. It is every Windows up, every application's up and running. I don't organize them. I don't put them in spaces.
yeah.
So is this going to be a challenge that is going to you're going to lose steam and forget about a year from now? Or is this really a new way to work with your device that makes sense? So
And I'm with you on that. I don't know that it's going to work the way that they're hoping it works, but I do not mind at all anytime they want to put an option like that in. I mean, it'd be
an
one thing if
option.
this was like
Yeah.
everybody's going to be using MainStage from now. That's your desktop.
Yeah.
No, if it's an option, by all means, let's do it. Give me 5 or 6 different ways that I could potentially focus more effectively. I mean, Alan, if I have a document that I'm working on and I only want to work on that, I can do that whole full screen now, and it's really cool. But like,
Hmm.
that's it. That's
Sure.
all I can do, right? But there are issues there where I want to get out of it, and then I'm trying to figure out how do I get out of it, and what do I do, and how can I find some information but not all information. So maybe this will do it. And if they keep developing other things that are options, I'm all for it. So I'm all for it.
Options are good as long as
Yeah.
they don't make things overly complicated with too many
Right.
gestures, too
Right.
many buttons,
Yeah.
too many things you have to deal with setting. Um, I'd be curious to see how it plays out. So
Yep. Yep.
overall, I do think it was probably one of the more full keynotes and a set of announcements I've seen, where it felt like every operating system had some decent amount of updates to it, with the exception of the
Yep.
tvOS. And
Yep.
overall, it was pretty fun. Again, there's a lot of other things we didn't talk about. So if you found this whole hour and a half of us talking enlightening and interesting, I do encourage you to go spend another hour and a half and watch the keynote. You can actually
Yep.
see all the updates and a little more demonstration than what we're able to give, because we don't have our hands on this new software yet,
Yeah.
and won't for a few more months. So,
Alan, can I just mention one quick thing? We didn't talk about it, but I only want to spend 20 seconds on it. But
mhm.
I don't know if you noticed that when you mentioned wallet, and I thought it was incredibly cool, and they just breezed past it. The idea that potentially a digital wallet or digital ID, if you go and let's say you want to buy alcohol, that potentially you could show them a version of your ID that only says, yes, this person is 21 and this is their birthday, rather than showing them an ID that has all sorts of other things like my address on it and all of that. I don't
Hmm.
know if you noticed that, but there are ways in which you
I
could actually
didn't.
make it's kind of like the health ID where you could say, hey, by the way, I can tweak this to say, I'll show you my digital ID says verified they are over 21 or something, as opposed to when we give our IDs. I mean, there are valuable stuff on there that
Hmm.
potentially becomes a security issue. So I think anytime we can digitize some of this and know that there's security, obviously they have things like passkey and all this other stuff we didn't talk
Hmm.
about because I'm not really sure how it works. But Mac does a really good job of trying to keep security first and foremost. And if
Agreed.
they can make it efficient while also keeping it secure, and I think that's a really good example of those that got me excited. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I could definitely see how that helps, right? Not have to turn my ID over to someone, not have to give them permission. Just like with
Hmm.
medical ID, I want to show you when I'm lying. You called me yesterday when I was on a run about to die. It's like I want someone to be able to grab my phone and see how to call and get the information about my blood type without all the other stuff, right? And that's just another example. So I think, you know, Apple's doing some great, exciting things, and that was just one of the little keys that kind of snuck in there that I think is explains a lot about the
Yeah,
way that they're approaching this. So it's
that's
cool.
good. Just for reference,
All right.
that was like 2.5 minutes. So
No, it
just letting you
wasn't.
know.
It was not
Yeah,
2.5 minutes.
it was
Yeah,
about
just
two.
like
It was
just like
about
the keynote wasn't an hour and a
two.
half. It was like 2 hours. So anyway,
It was
whatever.
about 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Just letting you know. No, that's good. Good points. Good points all
Yep.
the same. Yeah.
Yep. All
All
right.
right. Well, let's wrap this up, Brian. The
Okay.
good thing is these are all things we'll probably be talking about in future episodes in the fall, when all these things are coming out, we can kind of attest to it. But in the meantime, Brian, if somebody wants to kind of dialogue with us, maybe they've got questions or some features that we didn't hit on that they're excited about that we want to cover maybe in a follow-up episode, we can certainly do that. How do you recommend they go ahead and try to talk to us?
Yeah, send us an email at info@themesh.tv, and let us know about future topics that you're interested in. Tell us where we screwed up with our explanation of stuff, which I'm sure is many. So info@themesh.tv. You can also go to our website at www.brothers-n-tech.com.
All right.
Brothers-n-tech.com.
That is our show for today. Thanks so much for watching or listening. Again, follow up with us, ask us a question. We're happy to entertain your questions or thoughts or ideas you've got about anything we're talking about: family, home, and personal technology, and especially in this particular episode, or what kind of new fun things could be coming down the pike for us before too long. All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Brian, thanks. It's good seeing you as
Thanks,
always.
man. Yeah.
All right,
Happy
take
belated
care,
birthday.
everyone. Oh, yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was just
Yeah,
yesterday.
yesterday.
Yeah.
It was yesterday.
Yeah.
Yes. I have to remind you of these things now. You're to that
I
age.
know.
So,
I'm old.
all
I don't remember these things very well. So thanks though.
all right,
Appreciate it.
man.
Take care,
Yep.
everybody. See ya.
All right. Bye bye.
Oh, I always forget. Hold on, everybody. I've got to
Oh,
actually play the
gosh.
closing on this. Jeez.
Yeah.
I forget. Here we go.
Don't
All right.
forget about
Goodbye.
me. Yeah. All right. Bye bye.